Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coaches Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Need, and I'm lazy and I'm not going to do my ad read because I want to get into this chat with Joey Sats. What's up, man?
What's up, man? Pleasure to be here. How are you?
It's my dude. The pleasure is all mine. We were just mentioning off air, been exposed to each other's content, or but just haven't crossed paths. And you're coming off of tearing your quad. I'm at the end of the tunnel. I'm doing the hybrid athlete thing, and we're just sharing some stuff. You're talking about that post surgery pain. What was that like
Yeah.
for you?
So I've had some other knee surgeries. I tore my bicep like 4 years ago, had a pec tear, and this injury, bar none, was definitely the worst. And it's one of those things when the injury happened, I was still kind of in shock. I didn't really know exactly the extent of it. I was definitely in pain after, but you have a lot of inflammation, the
Yeah,
adrenaline's going. So you're kind of riding not the high, but just probably the endorphin rush. So the pain was getting gradually worse, but I was lucky to get right into the operating room like 2 days after the injury.
okay,
So it happened in Texas, and they wanted to do the surgery right away in Texas. And I was like, "Hey, I'm from outside of Philly. Logistically, if there's any way you can get me back home, that would be awesome." So we got home, and then right the day after I got home, it was right into the operating room, and yeah, man, just like we were kind of just briefly discussing, was coming out of that, I had no idea how bad the pain was going to be. And that pain for me was about two and a half, I want to say 2.5, 3 weeks
oh,
of just, day to day. And it did get better, but I would say that first week, man, I don't know how it was for you, but
brutal.
it was absolutely brutal. So now when I'm talking to a couple people I know who've either had the surgery or they have to go in for it, I just tell them like, hey, get through that first initial week or two because it's going to suck. You know that the pain. And listen, best case scenario is you didn't have the same experience that I did, and it's going to be a lot less pain. Awesome, but I just want to give you the reality of it, and also being down a leg, man. Like having a pec or an arm, it was way different because you can still move around, right? Like
Hmm.
this was, I can't drive, can't go to the bathroom, trying to get in the shower. Thank God for my wife, being able to
Yeah.
really be home and help me and stuff like that. But dude, it was bad. And on top of that, I was really struggling with sleep. So that first week, you're obviously trying to rest as much as you can.
Hmm.
And we know sleep's important, but that was, maybe an hour or two max, and everything in between was not deep recovery sleep whatsoever. But I'm at the point. It was kind of just once that pain had subsided, definitely had a lot better attitude, moving forward. And now it was more just, okay, what can we do? Can we get to
Yeah.
work, start the recovery process on my end? And I'm at that point now where, I'm able to do most things and
Hmm.
it's going really well. So if anybody's listening to this, and I'm sure we can dive into it more, but just get through that first week or two, and then you start to see somewhat of a light or a glare at the end of the tunnel
Yeah.
compared to the beginning. But it was definitely a shocking experience for me, and I was like, "Oh, damn, I was not prepared for this."
Yeah. I got a text from Dave Tate. I guess he had seen my post and my story, and he sent me a text. He was like, at 18 hours after your surgery, your nerve block will wear off. Be prepared. And I was like, be prepared for what? And he just said, take the medication. And I remember it was like clockwork at 18 hours after my surgery. The injury itself for me didn't hurt very much. It just felt like someone hit me on the top of my knees with a couple hammers. And then the swelling took over and it was just like a pressure. I
Right.
remember I remember in the ambulance, they're like, do you want fentanyl? I was like, absolutely not. um, but yeah, thank God for my wife in that situation. 18 hours, it was like two elephants were standing on my knees. I was ghost white, sweating and shivering, crying, and my wife's rubbing my back. But what ended up happening was the nurse printed off my medical notes, but it cut off at the bottom. So the they gave me, what was it? Fuck, it's Vicodin. They gave me Vicodin, but they didn't give me anything for the nerve pain. So they forgot the gabapentin, and they ended up doubling my morphine and then doubling my gabapentin. And I was still struggling. I don't think I slept for a couple of days. And because of all the medication, I couldn't take a shit.
Oh, that was awful. That was
So
awful.
I got an enema, still didn't do anything. Had to do that the next day. And like you talk about your wife's support, like, dude, my wife had to wipe my ass at one point because I was
100%,
both
man.
legs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was brutal. And I can attest that for if you can get through that first week, and for me, that first week was entirely in the hospital because they did the surgery where I got hurt. We were 7 hours from home. And the Canadian free healthcare wouldn't pay for my transport back home. It was a whole ordeal. But so how far are you out from surgery now?
So the surgery was August 12th. Yeah. So I'm sitting
Oh, you're
at,
like a month after me.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
sorry, a year and a month.
yeah. So just about what, 3 months out. So right around that 12-week period. And that's where, now it's like I can walk around, I can drive, I can do all my day to
Yeah.
day activities. I'm also at that point where I got to be careful because things are feeling good,
Yeah.
right? And, coming from a lifting background. And thank God I've had other injuries where some I rushed, some, I didn't do enough, but I'm at that kind of enough of that wisdom to be like, hey, if I recover faster than what they said, awesome. If it takes me a week or two longer, like, I'm cool with that too. Like, I'm just trying to make this so I don't ever have to do it again. And it's
Hmm.
kind of funny. Like, if it did, and I only say this because I know a guy who literally just got to, I think he was maybe like anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks. And then he had to go back in and get it redone. And I was just
Oh,
like, oh my gosh. But the knowledge that you acquire just from the recovery process,
yeah.
it's like I know there some changes I would make, whether it was more pain medicine or just how I went about things. But at least for being an athlete and a coach, you come out with a whole new perspective. That just bettering yourself and a way you can serve your clients and just kind of give them a heads up and just learn from the whole thing and try to grow through it instead of go through it. That's always kind of my mindset. And I'll be honest, man, that first week, kind of like you said, there were definitely some tears. I remember
Oh yeah.
I was sleeping on the second floor at our house because I was like, I just want to try to spend as much time with my wife as I can. And before that, I was down in our living room, kind of living in the living room essentially.
Hmm.
Um, but I was like so uncomfortable. So I get on my crutches and I start to try to go down the stairs. And I remember one, I had almost slipped and I was just like, oh man, like if that were to happen. And then it's kind of those demons get in your head where you're questioning everything, blaming yourself. And I just broke down, man. Like I just
Yeah.
sat there and I was just crying my eyes out. And I'm sure that there was,
Oh yeah.
the whole pain factor, the psychological factor, and it happened so quick with the turnaround time. I didn't really even have time to process at that point what had happened. And for me, this is definitely the most significant or biggest injury I've ever had. And from what I've heard, like it's a big one for most people. And
Yeah.
you see guys who either change their direction of their lifting career from it, or maybe it's not the same, or it is the same, but it makes you think those thoughts,
Hmm.
and you're not really put in that position too often or forced to be in that position. So for me, it was just trying to come to terms with it all, and I think that's necessary too. Like, if I try to act too macho throughout the whole thing, that would have bit me in the butt at some point or another. So
Yeah.
I just kind of let that happen, and I felt good that I kind of got that part out of my system and really could have a better vision moving forward with the whole process in itself.
Dude, so much of that resonates with me because, I had my fair share of breakdowns. I tried to be as positive as possible because it's just in my nature to like look for opportunities. And the same way that you mentioned the transformation that you went to, like grow through it, not go through it. I really like that quote because, dude, 2024 into 2025 was the most transformative year of my life as a man. And I think had I not allowed myself to feel those feelings, I would have missed out on all those opportunities for growth and for learning. Um, there was just feeling like a burden on your partner
Oh, for
is
sure.
is the worst feeling ever, especially if you're supposed to be the person who's the provider, the protector, right? As we all, we want to be that alpha male guy. And now we're crying because, we spilt our piss bucket, like
Right.
that's a real thing. Um, One of the things that I had a question about, I know you're a very high level strongman athlete. How did your identity as an athlete change? because I'll speak for myself first. The meet that I hurt myself in, was supposed to be a tune-up meet for my last meet ever. I knew I was stepping away from the platform. I'd been competing for 15 years. I didn't identify as Paul the powerlifter anymore. So it was a really easy pill for me to swallow, to close that door, because the door was being closed anyway. How did that identity as an athlete either shift or maybe get stronger for you?
Yeah, so kind of a two-part answer, and once again, everything you're saying, I'm resonating with, and I actually have some chill bumps underneath the hoodie here.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the big identity check for me, and I was blessed that this happened early on, was in 2019. So leading up, I started strongman in about 2016, and I got into it pretty aggressively because I'm a lot like most lifters, an all or nothing kind of person.
Yep.
So got into strongman training, signed up for a first competition. I think that first year I did like 10 or 12 shows because I
Fuck
was like,
yeah. I
I
love
want to
that.
just, yeah, I was like, I want to play with all the implements. And obviously, we go out to do our best and winning is ideal, but there were some shows where I just wanted to go and try that event in strongman that I haven't seen before. So I was getting a lot of exposure. Quickly, I realized that 12 competitions is not sustainable in a strongman career. And then I had a couple of runs at nationals, and I was creeping up in the rankings. So like the nationals in 2018, I took fourth place and I missed the podium by like 1 or 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that was like, dude, like you can really go somewhere with this. And I was getting some international opportunities. So I competed in Ukraine after that, and
Fuck
really
yeah.
was just focusing on how far could I push it with where I was at in my career with strongman. So 2019 was a really big prep. Everything was going as perfect as you could imagine. Like I had a lot of time to train. I was running a bigger gym at the time, and that was doing well. So I was putting all my energy and efforts into this prep. And I ended up taking first for nationals, and that was for not only the 242 but the 275 class. So that was like a big deal to kind of beat both classes. And it was funny because I talk about this a lot with people. Is as I was getting up there, I received this really cool, almost like a WWE belt,
Hell
right? And I got
yeah.
all these, sweet trophies and stuff. But dude, I felt so empty, and I was like, kind of like sitting there, like talking to myself, like, why are you feeling this way? Like, why are you at like not on cloud nine?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it hit me that I had tied so much of myself to this goal or this strongman identity. And then I realized how quick my brain was to be like, well, that's not good enough. Or you need, or like, what's the next thing? And you can see that with lifters, especially when it comes to PRs and numbers. And I really had to soak that in for a bit. And that was something you always hear about, right? Like, don't tie your identity to the sport. And I've probably said that to people before that. And then here I am, like, feeling none of these emotions that I expected to feel.
Yep.
Kind of was just numb. Like, I remember after I was kind of like, okay, like, you guys want to go grab some pizza or walk around town?
Yeah.
It was so bizarre. And in my brain, I was like, dude, you're gonna feel like the man. Like you've accomplished, you've trained so hard. So in 2019, that's when I really realized like my identity is so much more and so much bigger than
Mm-hmm.
just this sport. And I've always kept that message as I moved on, where what I realized is this will always be a part of my identity, but it's not the, you know, top pillar or really what I'm trying to do everything for. And I realized how much more my identity was from there. So and on top of that, I realized that I love the sport of strongman. Like I love the community, I love the lifts, and that'll always be a part of me, whether it's with training or competition or going to comps just to support people. But I had to quickly realize like what really makes me and what am I comprised of. And that's when I had that reality like of the future aspirations I have or how I live my life on a day-to-day basis. So the second point kind of answer to this was in that case, I knew I was actually okay compared to like in
Yeah.
2019, right? So with this injury, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen from here, right? Like let's just take it day by day. Let's see how the recovery goes. Would I love to compete again? Absolutely. If I get to a point where I realized that me competing could actually have far more negative implications on myself and just in general, and that maybe that identity, then I'm okay with meeting myself with where I'm at. It doesn't mean that I don't have aspirations still, but I also have that ego in check where it's like, what is this? If I accomplish this or if I go out to do this, what does that really change about anything? And I'm at the point where it's like, even if I became, world's strongest man competitor, it's like, it really doesn't change my life that much having that. And there's probably other things that I can do that would. So,
Hmm.
I find myself in that capacity to be in a good place because of the prior experiences that I've had. And for me, man, like I'm a very take it day by day. I'm a pretty chill personality by nature, and now I can look at things and one take everything I've learned from this experience and really just level up as a person and a coach. But on top of that, be a little bit more not selective, but see the bigger picture and
Hmm.
realize, okay, like should I go down that road or not? Is it really worth the time and the investment or the ROI? And if not, then it's like I'm okay with competing at a local show. I'm okay with doing other goals that I have, but showing up still to support my friends and stuff like that. So yeah, long story somewhat long is
No, it's
I
great.
had that ego check in the past, but I definitely think it's important to talk about because I'm sure people that are listening to this could find themselves in a similar situation, and you just find that so many people are so tied to that, and then it could get all erased in a second. Then you're like, well, what ground do I have to stand on, right? And
Yeah.
that's where it's a scary place to be, and can lead people into either self-destructive paths or really just an identity crisis to begin with. So I would just say to anybody listening, like, get your piece of paper out, man, and just put your thoughts and really try to figure out like who are you at the root of everything? What are those morals and values? And just realize you're so much more, and the greater picture is so much bigger than you think. And if you can assess that and have some self awareness, I think you're going to be in a good place. But a lot of people don't even ask themselves those questions, or they're honest with themselves when those questions are asked to them.
Well, dude, there's so much there to pull out. Like the first part being is like just asking yourself the questions. Like most people spend so much time doing and very little time being.
Mm,
Um, and the way that that relates to this, to your story, to my story, is that being means like who are you at the core, not what you do, but who you are. And one of the reflections that I had during my process was like, powerlifting is a reflection of who I am. It is not who I am. Because for me, who I am is someone who pursues hard things. That was just the hard thing that I chose. And it was the same with bodybuilding. It's like, what is the hard thing that I can choose? So I looked at it as like, well, I've got this really hard thing that I'm trying to go through with this rehab. If I am who I say I am, I better approach it like me. So I'm going to take this opportunity to become a better version of myself, serve my clients to a higher degree, learn more, and it did so much for my career, for my ability to serve others. I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And you talked about like feeling empty when you stepped on that podium. When I did that bodybuilding show this summer, 13 months after my surgery, dude, I have never felt so fulfilled in my life because I did it for me. There was no external validation. There was like, even though I won the show, it was just like, yo, I did something really fucking cool and I proved that I am who I am. And when you do that, the level of fulfillment you get from your endeavors is just like unbelievable. So I'm really excited for you in the next, 9 months, because within a year you'll be back to doing whatever you want to do. Um, I definitely didn't think that a year and a half ago I'd be running 17 miles in a week, but here we are. Um, I want to ask, during your, you kind of went over your competitive history. I know you more so as like a YouTuber and being, very, very popular and getting your name out there on YouTube. When did YouTube come into it for you?
yeah. So YouTube started. I want to say, I mean, I was probably like 20, 19 or 20 at the time. So during this period, YouTube was kind of starting to pop off a bit.
Okay.
And I was just following guys who were are mentors and friends of mine now. I literally had one of my original mentors, Zach Evanesh, who kind of was the only guy at the time, but it was probably like Zach Evanesh, maybe like Joe DeFranco,
Hmm.
Mark Bell. And they were doing a lot of like gritty underground training. And then they were also talking about the gym side and the business side of things. And I always tell this story because it's just funny with the Zach Evanesh. And at this time, he was training wrestlers out of this garage gym, and it was super gritty and hardcore. And I remember I just stumbled upon because I was either looking up like a workout motivational video or something like that, and
As
I
one does.
yeah, and I remember watching it, and I was just like, holy shit, like this is what I want to fucking do. Like,
Yeah.
and it, but it wasn't even about the YouTube. It was just the way he was training and the athletes that he was working with. And it just felt so in line with kind of my morals, values, philosophies of training and just getting after it. And it's funny too, because this is like, not even a 20-year-old version of me. So of course I'm like jacked and ramped up. And the way I coach then is a lot different than I coach now.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Oh yeah.
um, but really, I think what started it, and it was when I had my first personal training gig, and I just wanted to use YouTube as a way for me to almost have a training log. So at this time, like I had a laptop with a webcam, and that's how I'd film my videos. Like the quality was so terrible, and I wanted to be able to look back uh, and just see like the whole process and the journey of my own training. And it's funny because I'm sure you've dealt with, some of the like the typical back in my day in high school, I did this X, Y, and Z, and
Oh
there's
yeah.
no proof or validity unless they were really, really good. But I always thought it'd be funny when somebody asks, I could just pull the video up and show them so they know I wasn't like BSing them at the same
Yep.
time. Um, but so it started off as just a training log. And then as time went on, I started to use it more probably for the business, but also just to answer questions that either I had or the people that I was working with had. And it was a great resource for me to just say, hey, if you have questions, let me know. I'm going to make videos on them. And it kind of backlogged all this content for me so that I could just send people a link and it could offer them some value. And then really what I guess the big change was when it became more of a not like a gig, but I was putting a lot more effort into it,
Hmm.
was when I was opening up my first gym location. I started to really kind of figure out like, okay, how does this whole YouTube thing work? How are these people getting these more of these views and put more research behind it. And there was a strongman at the time who had a good YouTube following. His name was Brian Alsruhe. And at this point, he's been on a lot of podcasts and a lot of people know his name. And I remember watching his content on strongman. And I looked up where he was located, and he was in Maryland. So I'm outside of Philadelphia, and I was like, well, Maryland, that's not too far. So it was about a 2 hour drive. And I remember I shot him an email, just taking a shot in the dark. And I just said, hey, do you think I could come out and train with you? And maybe you could do some strongman training with me. I got this show coming up. And he responded, which at that point I was shocked because
Yeah.
I really had no validity or like a following at that point. So I went out and just trained, and I paid him for his time. And the coolest part was I was known more for Olympic weightlifting, and I was transitioning into strongman, but he had a strongman specific channel. And he said, hey, man, I don't know really anything about the Olympic lifts. Do you think maybe you could do some tutorial videos on like the clean and jerk and the snatch and I'll put it on my channel? So I just said yes because I like
See, no. Yeah.
yeah, you're the same way where it's like it's a challenge.
Yeah.
At this point, I hadn't really filmed anything like that, so after I said yes, I'm like, what did I just commit to? Like he's got all these followers. I don't look like a total schmuck. So I made these videos super rough looking back, and then I sent it to him. And since YouTube was pretty popular or kind of on the growth spurt then, it was like 10,000 subscribers like overnight, dude. And that's like unheard of really in
Holy
today's
shit.
like YouTube demographic.
Yeah.
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 So now it's like, holy shit, like an audience and people are asking, and that kind of put me on the map in terms of YouTube. And even through him in the early days, like I got to meet with Juji Mufu, who's now like almost a 10-year really good friend, and a lot of other people just that were kind of in that group and who were working together. And just like one thing led to another, where either people had saw me in a video or I would just reach out to people that I looked up to and just said, "Hey, this is kind of my channel. Here's the premise of it. I'd love to, do some work with you if possible, or if there's any videos that you would like for your channel." And I was kind of just putting myself out there. And
Mhm.
obviously, you get people you don't hear back from. Some people, say yes, or you never know. Years down the road, they reach back out. So I was just grinding away. I was running a gym business and I was making the videos, and a lot of that stuff was either me answering my own questions that I was interested in at the time, or just showing what I was doing. Like with YouTube for me, it's really more so been, hey, like this is what I'm interested in or what I'm doing. I never try to come at it in like a dogmatic approach, and I've always wanted to learn and grow. So I figure if I can get in with certain people who I respect and admire and just be the student, like that's tend to do really well for me on YouTube, because it's not like a right or wrong thing. It's just like you're here with me, we're kind of learning together,
Mhm.
but at the same time it's developed some really amazing relationships and just knowledge just from the byproduct of getting out there and just keeping an open mind and taking what I like, discarding some of the things I don't, or maybe there was things that I didn't necessarily like or fit with, but then when I got to meet the person and dive deeper, I'm like, holy crap, like this stuff's awesome. So it's been really cool for me to have that experience. And that's kind of the way I keep it now, and I'm not as consistent as I was before. I'm trying to get more consistent back with it, but it's never been like once again, my identity or my
Yep.
main breadwinner. So I've just enjoyed it as a passion project, really.
Dude, I love that it all started with you asking. Like, just, I always tell people if you never ask the question, the answer is always no. And,
100%.
it all started with you asking to go train with this guy and paying him for his time, I must say, which is so like, listen, if you're asking anyone for advice, the first thing out of your mouth should be, hey, I need some help with something. I'm happy to pay for your time. Most people, to be honest, wouldn't charge you for their time, especially if you're genuinely interested. Like I hop on calls all the time with young business owners just to chat with them and help them out
Hmm.
because I want to do that. And then the other thing is like trying to collaborate with people. That idea of a growth mindset, I think, is so important. Like the abundancy mindset of you and I have maybe competing Instagram channels. Like you and Juji Mufu are kind of competing for the same eyes. But in reality, the more people that you can reach and provide great content to, the more people you're going to bring in. So the industry grows as a whole. And so I never understood why people were so protective of their, I mean, intellectual property, if you want to use that word. I don't know how intellectual a lot of the property is, but I digress. But being able to collaborate with people, you were in a season of yes. And I think understanding that early on in your career, you need to be asking for help with everything that you need help with, and you need to be saying yes to every opportunity that crosses your desk. Now, in the season that you're a husband, you have a gym. I don't know. Do you have children?
So I have a 13-month-old son. Yes.
So, 13-month-old. I'm sure that this would probably be considered, and you're also going through your own rehab process. I'm sure this is more of a season of no for you.
So it's funny, and I would say yes and no, because I literally just had this conversation when I was working with John Heck.
Yeah.
Um, I'm the kind of guy, and I do take a lot of pride in this. I would say I'm equally very humble, and I'd rather be that way than the
Yeah.
opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But if there's a cool opportunity, like I'm hopping in my truck and I'll drive 12 hours.
Same.
Like
Yeah.
I'm that kind of guy. And kind of to your point that you had spoke about before is I'm sure both of us have given away so much free stuff and we've technically lost so much money, but don't necessarily care because we
No.
know that in the grand scheme of things, it's all gonna work out. Like, if you're talking about universal principles or, what things do you know to be true? For me, it's hard work pays off, and
Yep.
when you're genuine and you're getting out there and you're opening more doors than you're closing, things just have a super weird way of how they work out, and for me, I'd rather just get out there, have this amazing experience or opportunity, because who knows what would happen if I didn't do it, right? And
Yep.
then I sit there with like, dang, that almost that regret of I should have just went out there and done it. But I would say 98% of the time, something always really cool comes out of it, whether it's people that watch it on YouTube or whether it's, talking to somebody and just developing a really amazing relationship. Or it could be 3 years. Like this whole, like I've had some really weird stories where things that from 10 years ago have come
Oh,
full
same.
circle, and you sit there and you're like, if I never had a conversation with that guy, this opportunity would have never presented itself. And that could have been a huge career change trajectory for good or bad. Um, so for me, there are some things I say no to. Um, I would say mainly the biggest change has been being a husband and a father, where
Yeah.
when it comes to like what's that top pillar for me, that's it. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to miss big things. I want to spend as much of my free and quality time with them. They deserve that. Time is my biggest asset and my most valuable resource. But with that being said, I'm so blessed to have a wife who supports and understands. And I know
Mhm.
if she says no, usually that's a good indicator of she knows that like my moral compass,
Yep.
and I listen to her. But if I'm on the fence and she says yes, then I know it's like you should go do this, right? And the other thing I love too is that you mentioned is this competition mindset, right? Like I know it's so cliche, but a lot of that comes from insecurity, or it comes with not being confident in who you are and the products and services you provide. Where for me, it's like there's a guy, he still is big on Instagram, but his name's Danny Swoll. He opened up a gym like 15 minutes from my house, and I'm going there on Sunday and just like hanging out and watching a powerlifting competition. There's no competition between us because we're confident in what we do. There's
Yep.
7 point almost 8 billion people on the planet right now, and all I need is 50 or 100, right? Like to actually have
Yes, yes,
you know,
yes,
you have
yes, yes.
a great living. And I never understood that, and I think in this industry, and probably most industries, but I think you see a little bit more with just fitness in general, is people can be so weird about that. But all the people that I work with, I've noticed across the board is they're open to all that stuff because they
Yep.
understand, and those are the people you want to work with because they
Yep.
understand it benefits everybody, benefits the industry. And listen, like I'm getting something from it, whether it's just a connection, a relationship, maybe it's business and or financially, but equally it's both of us. So I would just say once again, anybody listening to this, like if you're confident with who you are and what you stand for and represent, everybody can win if you do this correctly. And that's how you're going to find some really awesome people in the industry and have experiences you never would have had if you were just shutting those opportunities down.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, hard work pays off. The harder you work, the luckier you get, and you're always going to get as much as you give. I
Love it.
try to live according to that, especially with business. Like, dude, I did a 1.5 hour call last night with a friend of mine. He owns an online coaching business. I did a call with his coaches to help them with their process. And you'd be like, oh, well, they're going to take clients from you. It's like, no, because I know what I do and I know I'm good at what I do. And my business is not at risk. If anything, I help them get more business and they bring more people into the industry. Like it's so simple, but again, you're not gonna appeal to everybody with that type of mentality because, like you said, it comes down to insecurity. Um, with the gym business, you mentioned, you're a personal trainer and then you said you had a couple of gyms. Now is the gym that you're in right now relatively new, like a newer
Yeah,
space?
so long story short, I opened a gym in 2016. That was 5 or 6,000 square feet. And that was more of it was still kind of private-ish, but it definitely was more of a public gym. So,
Mhm.
you'd have walk-ins, all that kind of stuff. The joke at the time when I opened it was the gym was ahead of its time, which is funny because now you see so many gyms that are similar to what I was trying to do
Yeah.
or had then. And I ran that for about 7 years. And
What was it called?
during it was called the Lion's Den.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Lion's Den, and we specialized in strength training. And then we had a big strongman following. So this is as strongman was gaining some popularity. We ran classes and then also had open gym, but it was more of like a club type feel. So I
Okay.
wasn't trying to pack a cram with a ton of people, more quality over quantity. At that time, you had either commercial gyms or you had some boutique style gyms, and then CrossFit was like the big one in the room
Yeah.
at the time. But then as the years went on, I was kind of going through a bunch of my own stuff, a lot of self discovery, and just asking myself a lot of questions and a lot of adversity, to be honest. And I ended up closing the gym again at the end of 2023.
Okay.
And I was just doing all my online stuff and just trying to figure out like what was next. Like at one point, I was actually going to change careers completely because I was like, hey, I gave this a good shot. I never intended to get into the fitness as my career.
Right.
And so I was like, there's, another career field where I was like, hey, maybe this is the time. But then everything has a weird way of working itself out. Started doing more in-person stuff, group stuff, and my fire got relit. I had a new perspective on everything, and then I bought a space in May that was supposed to be just for me to train. I was like, hey, I'm going to have this training space. I'm going to film YouTube content out of it, and maybe just have some people here and there come in and just train. But I would say in the last half of the year, I've just missed in-person coaching and connection with people. And I've had such a different re-energized mindset, and I'm looking at things differently, that now it's like starting small. So I have the space. I run a few classes in the mornings. We have strongman on Saturday. And then in the evenings, I'm with all my athletes at a few different high schools in this area. So I do a lot of performance with the athletes, and I just love working with the kids. But then I get, my fix with that. And then in the mornings, I have the groups of mostly adults that I work with. So I have this really cool balance right now. And I have the gym that I can have all my equipment in. I can record my videos. And to be honest, man, like I literally said to my wife before I got on this call, I was like, I'm just so happy, man. Like this has been
Yeah.
like the best like year and a half of my life in so many ways. And I'm privileged to have all the work that I have and have the opportunities that I have. And kind of like you were saying, just like with where you're at, like, dude, it just feels so freaking good, man.
Yeah,
And,
man.
and like, I just wish that for everybody. And I'll keep doing the best I can. And, we just assess as things go on and kind of take the direction that seems best right now. But it's a really good mix of everything that I enjoy doing, and I'm just living a very fulfilled life.
Dude, I love to hear that. And I agree. Like, I think more people would stand to benefit from just asking themselves like what they want. Um, the big theme that I pulled out of what while you were talking was like you just leaned into where your fire was in that moment. Your fire wasn't in the gym anymore. So you closed it down. Obviously, you made sure that you were stable enough in your income with the online coaching that you could support your family. And then you took your time figuring out what the next thing that you were going to be passionate about. You made a really smart decision to buy the building. Okay. Like, let's just, if you own a gym and you don't own the building, you're kind of playing from behind the eight ball, but you bought a space. So,
So I'll backtrack. I didn't buy the space outright, but I have a really good agreement
okay.
with the guy. So, but yeah. But anyway, it's best case scenario versus being in a contract and a lease, like that type of thing,
Right.
where you can get yourself real screwed in those positions. So where I'm at, once again, best case scenario, like love the position.
Okay, perfect. So, you know, you made this decision to dive in, but it was just I'm still passionate about training. I want a space where I can train, and then you realize like, oh, I missed this part, and so you dive back into it. Dude, there's elements of my business that I have that don't make me any money, right? Like if I look at the elements of my business, I don't think I've ever actually shared this in the podcast, but we have our coaching business, Master Athletic Performance, myself, my wife, our 5 coaches. That makes me the majority of my money. Then I have my mentorship program, which probably about 40% of my money comes from that. And I love both of those things. Love doing it. The education side of my business makes me like 1% of my total income, but I fucking love it. And I just dive into it and I build it. And I know, again, you're going to get back what you give. So eventually I know that an opportunity will present itself. And funny enough, A week and a half ago on Friday, an opportunity presented itself. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And so I don't understand the mentality of some coaches where they'll kind of do what they think is expected of them, or follow someone else's lead. It might work in the short term, but it's never going to work out in the long term. You said yourself earlier on that you kind of take things day by day. When you're making a more large scale decision like opening up a gym space, is there a long term vision for you, or is it genuinely just like, I love doing this, it's not going to take away from my ability to support my family, I'm going to dive in?
Yeah, for me, I would say it's the second of those,
Yeah.
where I really and I use this with training all the time. Like I'm sure you've gotten the question, right? Like I'm not motivated to train or I'm burnout from training. And they're like, well, what do you do? And for me, I'm always like, just lean into where you want to go. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to, if you're like, dude, this strength training is bogging me down, but you like your walks and maybe those walks turn into jogs or runs. Like go do it, go do that. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, don't just either force yourself to continue to train because we know that that's going to lead to even more burnout or something worse,
Yeah.
um, or think that you have to stop either. Like, that's the other big one, too, is you see people, and you can even say with like dieting, right? Like, people, like, they're
Mm.
crushing their diet, and then they just rebound completely instead of like, there's some in between steps that we can take here. So the same thing is just how I perceive it. Like I have the amount of side projects and things that I've done that have gone nowhere is insane, but they've yeah, I mean, like, let's be honest,
Yeah,
dude. Like
for sure.
if you're an entrepreneur brain, like
Yeah.
I see things like this is corny. I haven't even said this. Like I was working on just an AI generated Instagram account that was geared towards old 80s culture, like bodybuilding, like mentality and these
Yeah. Yeah.
images. And I was like, I could give two fucks if anybody follows it, but I think it's cool and it makes me happy and I
Yeah.
enjoy that creative side of it. I've done stuff with photography and videography. Yes, they mesh because I've learned those skills, but it's those passion projects that tend to lead to just you being more fulfilled in general and you don't care necessarily so much on
No.
how they do it all, but it's just the change of pace, right? It's once again, and it's funny just because we come from lifting backgrounds, how you see that, right? Guys putting in all this time in training and preps, and then they are like, well, what do I do now? And it's just like, well, what do you want to do,
Just keep
man?
fucking
Like,
training, idiot.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. Like switch it up. Like it's okay. It's okay
yeah.
to do a bodybuilding show. It's okay to, run a marathon, like whatever, because in the grand scheme of it, it's that you're moving and you're still training. So it's the same thing with me with work. And that's kind of like where I find myself gravitating towards, and along like what you said, these opportunities can come up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, okay, like that makes sense now. But if you didn't do that, that opportunity probably wouldn't have been there. So like I said, I think if you stick to those core principles and values and the three that you'd mention every day, like it's cliche, but life has a very weird way of just working it out.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't quit, like you're gonna succeed because you can't beat somebody that's just never giving up. And you see a lot of people who just give up or they don't go with maybe their gut. And I'm not saying it's always right, but at the same time, it's usually a good indicator of something to follow and see where it leads.
I'm going to lead this next question with a kind of a reflection that I've had on the last few days. So, one of the cool things about this new endeavor that I've gotten into with exploring my running and conditioning stuff has been kind of like a return to Paul when he was 17, 18, 19, just exploring fitness, trying a whole bunch of different stuff. I've been doing a ruck every week with 50 pounds, and it's just a set 60-minute ruck. And I got to a point where I did about 4 miles in an hour. No, just under 4 miles. And I was on that ruck the following week and I was like, I wonder if I can run. And so I tried running for a little bit and then I slowed down to a walk. I was like, I'm just going to try running for a little bit, a couple more times. And I did it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So then the next week I did 3 minutes of running, 3 minutes of walking. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's just like exploring fitness. And I sat down to reflect on that afterwards because I do my rucks on Saturday, and Saturday's a day I usually don't do much work. And I was like, I just took the same approach in that fitness endeavor that I do in my business. I just find things where I can push my capacity and I see if I can do it. And then I try to do a little bit more and I see if I enjoy it. And then I try to do a little bit more. But there always comes a time, and this is mature Paul speaking, where you have reached your capacity and it starts to push on other things. And it's funny because this last week when I did the 3 minutes, it worked out that I ran more in that ruck than I did in some of my runs during the week because it's 60 minutes long. And it was the first week that I actually had knee pain. I was like, okay, so I found my capacity. How do I relate that to business? I relate it to all the times where I've been burnt out or taken on too much, or it started to infringe on my personal priority list. How do you balance that, having your hand in so many cups, but still wanting to push yourself, still wanting to explore your capacities with business? Like where do you draw the line?
And it's funny because I literally had the same experience yet different. So I'm working with this client. His name's Ethan Bernard,
Oh,
and
I saw him on your Instagram.
yeah, so he started off as just under 700 pounds. He was 667 or 670, and I started working with him 4 or 5 months ago, and we decided to have him out here for 3 weeks, and it was a whole project, through the Jocko Fuel team, and dude, I crushed it. Like I'll be honest, like I was excited and I was going balls to the walls. I was with him 6 days a week, multiple days or multiple times during a day, on top of all my regular clients, running the gym, creating content, going to the high schools. And Paul, I won't lie, dude, like I was doing fantastic, right? And then I don't know if it was psychological because I knew that it was coming to an end or if I had reached my capacity, but he went or everything was done this past Sunday. And leading up, I had trips, right? I was going out meeting John Heck, so I had to
Mm-hmm.
schedule that. So I'm hanging out with Jocko, jumping in my truck, driving to Virginia, working with John, doing stuff there, coming back, kind of ending this whole thing. And on my drive back, that's where I realized like I had reached my capacity, and for me though, the coolest part was like obviously we do that in training and managing
Mm-hmm.
our fatigue and how hard we can push it. And this was more of a business endeavor for
Yeah.
me where I realized, okay, like at that pedal to the metal, right? My throttle's teetering here, but it took at that time, it was about 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, right? And this is everything I was doing. So I found kind of that breaking point for me where I needed a break. So I think it's going to be different in all the different situations and projects that you work on or do. First off, you need to have the self-awareness on when you're redlining, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a skill in itself. So realizing, okay, like either mentally or physically, I'm starting to break down because it's going to show in either one or both of those. And then two, the other one, just like you said, is when is it starting to trickle into the other areas of my life that it normally wouldn't, right? I did notice I was so fatigued that, my wife would do something that started to irritate me. And I knew I was aware enough to be like, this normally wouldn't bother you. Like this
Yeah.
normally wouldn't make you have like a snap or an attitude. Okay. Like you need to rest. You need to chill. So I think you kind of already hit the nail on the head, but I'm just reiterating the fact
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I literally went through the same exact thing of when you can notice that it's starting to interfere with areas of your life that it normally wouldn't or change your reaction than you normally would react
Mm-hmm.
from a systemic, emotional, physical way, um, that's a good indicator that if I continue to push this, the wheels are going to start falling off of this machine, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
we need to take it to the shop and get some repairs or reevaluate like what's going on in general. And for me, sometimes that's sitting down and looking at the projects and it's like, hey, is this filling the cup or emptying the cup? Okay. Or if it's in between, well, maybe I still keep it, but I need to focus a little bit more on this area per se. And really what it comes down to, and I think what I've gotten better at year after year, and by no means perfect, but it's kind of periodizing your life the way we would with our training, but almost
Yep.
on a yearly calendar. Like when I can sit back, and I don't know if you're the same way, like I need the structure and I need the plan. And yes, there's going to be deviations and adjustments, but I feel so much better when I know, hey, for this quarter or season, this is really where we're doubling down our focuses. And then maybe we switch over here. And it all kind of has to make sense on the work life balance that doesn't
Hmm.
really ever exist, but
Yeah.
we strive for it. Um, and it really is just auto regulating your life on a bigger
Hmm.
picture. And then that for me, that's where I like nerd out and have fun with it, right? Like I can sit there and write out the year, what my training is going to look like, what my work projects are like, which season's going to have an emphasis on one versus the other, and try to manage that yearly fatigue as best I can. And when it comes to certain things that need to be crossed off, I know when the line is for that. If it's areas I need to ramp up in, I can do that. But if you're trying to do it all, you have to realize, just like in training, you can't have it all. Or if you try to do it all, you're only going to get so much gains that are going to be
Yep.
very minimal. So you have to sit there once again, self reflection. Like where do I want to put the emphasis and focus on? For this part, where can I take away a little bit here or there? And once again, for me, it's the barometer of like my family, like how am I acting and behaving towards them? Is it work related? Is it not? And just being able to have more self awareness. As simple does not mean easy, but I think it's one of those things where we're on autopilot all the time, and we don't just take time, like you said, to be present in the moment to
Hmm.
actually assess like what is bringing us value or not, and making the right decision or call based on that response that we
Yeah.
feel.
Dude, I love that. I love the way you laid that out because this has been something that I've been really, I don't use the word struggle very often, but it is something that I've struggled with lately because we had a really big season of travel. So from the weekend of my show to about 2 weeks ago when we got home from our honeymoon, I was home only like 2 weekends. And when we got back, I looked at my calendar and I was supposed to go to Austin in a couple weeks for my first tactical games competition. And I was like, I need to not do that. And so it was, and then I had the reflection while we were on vacation that I spend my life either sprinting 100 miles an hour or resting. And I was like, I'm basically doing interval training with my life. And we know we can't do we can't do HIIT forever. And I've been kind of having this reflection on what kind of life do I want to be living? I tend to do quite a good job of pushing and pulling. I know when I'm going to push, and I have an end date of when I can pull back and kind of coast a little bit, reinvest into my family, my wife, and those things. And that's, to me, that's how I've always looked at balance. It doesn't exist it doesn't exist acutely, but it does exist chronically. And I'm looking at the business, I'm looking at the things I'm investing my time in, I'm reflecting. And what I noticed was when I'm in these seasons of push, my level of presence drops. And that's the problem is I don't cultivate enough time to sit and reflect because I'm always doing. And so the question then becomes, how do I keep pushing? Because I love the push, I love the opportunities, I love the service, but while still affording myself enough time to sit, reflect, and be present. Because when you're not present, you and I both know, if you had Ethan come down and spend 3 weeks with you, but you weren't present in those sessions with him, the outcome would have been terrible. So I think it's important for you highlighted the self-reflection piece because that needs to be a non-negotiable. Whether you schedule it into your calendar, like, hey, Wednesdays, I'm going to take 2 hours during the day. And it could be 30 minutes. It could be 2 hours. It could be I know a buddy of mine, his entire morning on Friday is like personal work. I'm like, whatever works for you to cultivate that level of presence and understanding like, hey, my thoughts, feelings, actions, and priorities are all in line. Dude, you have to do that. That has to be non-negotiable. And it might sound weird to talk about this on a podcast, but like you mentioned, you're not perfect. There's times when you probably choose to do business instead of hanging out with your wife or child. But you know, after the fact, you're like, I fucked up. How important is it that you have a spouse who supports you and understands what you do?
Uh, Probably one of the top priorities. Like I will say, like I've had all different types of relationships. You know, I've come from really toxic relationships that I didn't even know were toxic until I was kind of pulled back from it. But my wife is truly, she changed my life, dude.
Me
Like I'm
too.
not even trying to be weird or get into it on the
Weird.
podcast, but you know what I mean. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
she truly has changed my life and made me a better person for so many reasons. And that's why I said like there may be times where I'm like thinking this isn't the move, but she's so dialed in that she's the one who pushes me to go.
Same.
There's equally times where I could be in like a hardcore push phase and she has the awareness to be like, hey, like I know what you're doing and believe in everything, but I'm just kind of giving you some feedback and I've seen this happen before. And I'm at the point where I trust her when she tells me that for me to then pull back a little bit. So,
Hmm.
I think for anybody in any relationship, you finding the right partner is a game changer for you as an individual and your business on so many levels because if you're somebody who has big visions and big goals and you know you're going to be getting after it and crushing it and your partner's not in line with that,
Yep.
there's going to be friction, there's going to be tension that's going to fester up, and at some point it could explode. Not saying you can't fix it, but that's like a problem waiting to happen. And just being able to have the communication and understanding, and that's really what my wife and I say all the time. We're like, we just communicate very well. And I think a lot when we're talking to our friends or people who are having issues, a lot of it just stems from the lack of communication,
Yep.
or understanding, or I don't want to say like not truthful, but some people will just brush things off and act like they're okay with certain things
Hmm.
when really they know it doesn't align. So it's like being able to truly voice who you are, what you want out of this, what you're willing to put in, give and take, and being truthful about that. Because if you're not, it is definitely going to come out at some point.
Yeah.
So,
I,
yeah, huge, man. Changed my life. And that's why I'm married to her and she's the best.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, man. My entire life changed when I met my wife, and the business wouldn't be where it is. I wouldn't be the man that I am, and I firmly believe that the best business decision you can ever make is who you choose as a spouse. Um, there, there's just something special about having somebody who will tell you exactly what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Um, and I mean, I'm lucky that my wife's the co-owner of the business with me, so it
That's
works out really
awesome.
well. Um, how do you define success?
That's a good question, right? Because success, people can define it as money or social status. So at the end of the day, I think for me personally is am I doing the work and am I providing and leading the life that is in line with my morals and values that when I put my head on the pillow at night, I feel good about it. Like that to me is like I'm successful,
Yep.
and because I know followers can change. I know money's going to change, and those flashy things and external shiny objects are all going to go away. That's
Yep.
inevitable. So for me, it's am I doing the best job that I can in my relationships? Within my family, my wife, my child right now, uh, and am I sticking to those morals and values? And if I can do that, and I always ask because there's been times where some really bad things have happened, or I've been wrapped up in stuff, and I'll put I go to sleep, and I'm like, if I can't sleep, there's something that's not in line somewhere.
Yeah.
But for the most part, if I can make those decisions based on thinking ahead of time, like, am I going to be able to sleep tonight? Then I know I did the right thing. I know I'm leading that life that I know the byproduct is going to be a net positive, whether I can't see it immediately or it's going to come down the road. So for me, that's just living a successful and full life. Like I remember I was
Mhm.
actually at a conference, and they were talking. The owner of the company had talked about living a full life, and he was like, "Did you work hard? Did you laugh? Did you cry?" And there was one more, but like he was saying all those things, and I was like, "That's a full life. That's a full day. Like
Yeah.
where you're in touch with your emotions,
Yep.
you're getting after it and doing productive work that brings you fulfillment and value." Um, and it's like I try to have as many full days as I can, by bringing value to others, equally being receptive to the value that the people around me bring, and just feeling those emotions, right? Like I've been at points in my life where I had a lot of trauma or baggage and I didn't really feel anything. Yeah, I was doing the work, right? And I was
Mhm.
making money, but I didn't feel anything. So there's like the physical, the spiritual and emotional side that really have to kind of be in line there for you to have that fulfilling life. And you have to assess once again yourself and realize, like, can I improve in this area, or where's the deficit in another? And I think that just brings a very, very good, fulfilled, well-roundedness to your everyday pursuit of just growth and happiness.
Yeah. I love when people define success as a process rather than a destination. Um, I recently had to revisit, and I'm still kind of revisiting how I define success because for a long time I defined success as being able to do what I want, when I want, where I want, with who I want. And I looked at my life and I'm like, I just went to Europe for 2 weeks and I still had a business and I could do what I want. I was with my wife and like, I'm successful. This is cool. And I realized like it's been that way for a really long time. So I'm like, do I need to, or even I say trying to redefine success, but do I really need to redefine it? Can't I just live as a successful person? But, and again, it comes back to this idea of pushing capacity, right? So I think business is the most incredible personal development exercise that we could get into. And we're always learning, we're always growing, and I fucking love it, dude. I've resonated with so much of the things that you've said on this podcast, and I think so many people need to hear it. So I appreciate that. I do have one more final question. If there was one person that you would like to see me interview on the podcast, who would it be? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
Trying to think. See, that's the fun thing for me is I've worked with so many different people, and the cool part too, man, is like some of these people, a lot of people wouldn't even know about, right? And,
Yep.
and it's funny how we like think, oh, because they have a big social media following, or whatever. But some of the most interesting people I've met, I've come across on like day to day. But even, and I'm not trying to backtrack or change it too much, but even this podcast, right? Like a lot of people tune in for the X's and O's or the
Yep.
training, and all that stuff's fantastic. But what I get off to is the philosophical talk, man,
Me too.
because the philosophical stuff that makes all the other things just so much easier. And you really find that everything we had talked about can be downstream to
Yep.
all the X's and O's of training or running your business. And I think that just too many people neglect that stuff because it's challenging and it's not pretty. But if you can look at everything from a philosophical standpoint, it makes those other decisions a lot easier. But I'd have to, man, dang, I have to think about who I'd want to get you on the podcast. Um, if you haven't done one, I would say with Juji, he's a great guy to get on a podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, he's I always tell people, because from the outside perspective, maybe not at this point. I think maybe people have caught on, hopefully, more by now, but he's such a smart and calculated
Oh,
person because you see this guy who's doing all this crazy stuff and you watch it and it's entertaining. But when you get to sit and talk with him, the way his brain operates is like 10 steps ahead.
dude, he's an engineer. People don't
100
realize that he's an engineer.
100%. So if you haven't had him on, I think it would be cool because he's one of those guys too that, yes, loves to talk about training. But I think when I did a podcast with him, I mean, we've been friends for so long at this point, but we had a podcast. He loved the questions because they weren't the standard
Yeah.
podcast questions that
Yeah.
everybody asked him. And that's where you can really see how somebody's brain operates and works. And for me, the biggest thing I learned early on from him was this dude is a genius.
Yeah.
Like the way he thinks and his intuition and how he can kind of just look into the future based on his experiences or where things are heading and how he lays out what he does. It's just funny to the human eye. You're like, this guy's crazy, and I love watching his stuff. But then when you hear his explanation of why he's doing how he's doing it, you just have such a deeper, just understanding and appreciation for people that operate on that level. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to. I could connect you with him. He's a great guy, and I would
That'd be
say the
amazing.
philosophical stuff that you could get into when it comes to business, life, and training. And he's one of the guys who helped me try to figure out how to periodize my life. Like I periodize my training all the time, but when we sat down, he was like, how do you periodize your life, your year, and and I'm just like, I
You're like,
never
I'm
even
flying
thought
by
of
the
it.
seat of my pants here, brother.
Yeah, yeah, dude. Like it's today, is Wednesday, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think he'd be great, and I think if you take that approach with some of those cooler, in depth, different questions, and I think the viewers will really, really like the answers that they would get from him.
That'd be awesome, man. Joey, where can people find you?
If you just type in Zat Strength, so SZAT, the word strength in Google, you'll find all the social media links, Instagram, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. Mainly my two big media platforms are just going to be the YouTube, the Instagram. I had a podcast at one point. I should get that running. Anytime I do these, I always am like reminding myself of the things that I should be doing more of. But yeah, very straightforward and simple. And you can connect with me, send me a DM or an email. I'm one of those guys that definitely responds. It's me, like not a robot or anything. But yeah, no, I just appreciate you having me on and
Dude,
stuff we got to chat about. I'm excited to continue to build our relationship and help each other out in whatever ways we can, man.
dude, the pleasure was all mine. I definitely did not know this conversation was going to go in the direction it did, but I'm so glad. And yeah, really looking forward to continue to get to know you. And I'm actually going to be up that way a couple times in the next couple months. So we'll
Yeah.
try to get in a session or
Yeah,
something
would
like that.
love to have you swing by, man. And I knew actually it was going to be a good podcast because you have the astronaut mural in the background. And for those that have been following me for a while, I have this weird thing with just astronauts and deep thinking in space. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna take note of that. This is going to be a
I
good
have one. I've
conversation.
never done this before. I've never shared this one before, but I have that too.
Oh hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So and I got one over there. Big
love it,
astronaut
dude.
guy.
Love it. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm all about it, man. And just exploration.
100%.
Exploration. You can't go deep enough, and you're never gonna learn enough, right? And it's just gonna ever be going on and on. So I'm here for the ride, bro.
I love it, man. Thank you everyone for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.